Room 413 had always been quiet, until the night the walls began to whisper back. No screaming, no blood, just silence. And one missing guest. You're listening to Midnight Crime Stories, where every whisper carries a shadow and every night holds a darker secret. The rain had started before Eli Weston crossed the county line, a steady grey curtain that made the world blur at the edges. It fell in sheets over his windshield, dissolving the outlines of trees, neon signs, and forgotten gas stations into watercolor shadows. His wipers fought a losing battle, creaking across glass in a slow, rhythmic struggle that matched the tired pulsing behind his eyes. He didn't know why he kept driving. Maybe it was the silence he was chasing, the kind of silence that only exists in empty towns with dead streets and flickering lights. Or maybe he just didn't want to go home. If he even had a home anymore, the GPS had long since lost signal. His phone had one bar, and in the darkness through a muddy windshield, he saw it. Crescent Inn. The faded white letters buzzed faintly beneath a crescent moon mounted above the roof, a pale imitation of comfort. Eli pulled in. The parking lot was mostly empty. A rusted pickup, an old grey Buick, and now his rented sedan, wet and humming in the dark. He stepped out into the rain, the chill hitting him like a whisper across the neck. His coat did nothing to help. A sharp wind curled around the building and tugged at his sleeves as he crossed to the lobby. Inside, the warmth was jarring. Muted yellow lights, the buzz of an old vending machine, plastic ficus trees in each corner. It smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something older, like pages left too long in a basement. The man behind the desk looked up. Mid-50s, balding, heavy eyes that didn't quite meet yours when you spoke. Eli nodded at him, checking in. The clerk didn't smile, just tapped at a keyboard. You got a reservation? No. Eli rubbed the back of his neck, just passing through. A pause, the kind that felt like something unspoken. Then name, Eli Weston, the clerk typed. His fingers moved like they'd done this 1,000 times, but not once in the past week. Got a single. Second floor. Quiet end. Quiet sounds perfect. The man opened a drawer, pulled out a dull brass key attached to a worn tag. 413. Eli took it. Just as their hands brushed, the clerk froze. Wait. He looked at the tag again. Eli tilted his head. Problem. The clerk blinked once slowly, then shook his head. No, it's just, we don't usually, it's newly renovated. You'll be the first guest in that room in a while. His smile was paper thin. Eli didn't care. As long as the shower works. The man gave a single slow nod. It does. And you should get some rest. It's easy to feel strange here. This town's not for night people. Eli offered a polite laugh, but inside he felt it. That odd, almost psychic hum, like when you walk into a room and can't remember why, but your stomach turns anyway. He turned and headed for the stairwell. The hallway on the second floor was long, narrow, dimly lit by a string of ceiling lights that flickered every few seconds like they were unsure about staying awake. Room 413 sat at the farthest end, just past the ice machine, which let out a tired mechanical groan as he passed. He unlocked the door. The handle clicked, turned, and opened with a soft creak that echoed too far down the hallway. The room was clean. That much was true. Freshly painted pale gray walls, a made-up queen bed, a new lamp beside the nightstand. The TV looked modern. The bathroom tiles gleamed, but something felt too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind that lets you breathe, but the kind that wraps around your ears like cotton, the kind that listens. Eli stood in the doorway for a moment longer, his hand still on the knob, unsure why his chest had gone tight. Then he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He unpacked slowly. Not that he had much. Just a duffel bag, a laptop, and a plastic bag of gas station snacks. He tossed his coat over the armchair, opened the curtains. Outside was nothing but the dark. No view, just the reflection of himself staring back in the glass. The rain kept falling. Time passed. How much he wasn't sure. The digital clock glowed 11:52 p.m. He sat on the bed, scrolling aimlessly on his phone until the signal vanished again. He let the device drop to the comforter, and that's when he heard it. A sound, faint, soft, not footsteps, not knocking, just a murmur behind the wall, as though someone were whispering, but not words, not language, just the texture of breath pressed through closed lips, like syllables lost in a dream. Eli froze. He turned his head toward the wall, pressed his ear to it. Nothing. Only silence. He laughed at himself, low and dry. Probably the pipes, or the wind, or just fatigue. His body had been on edge since the moment he entered this town. But still, he got up, walked to the wall again, knocked lightly. 1 second. 2. Nothing knocked back. He shook his head. Get a grip, Weston. Still before bed, he opened the voice memo app on his phone. Just a habit. Just checking in. Crescent Inn. Room 413. Heard something weird. Probably nothing. Just me being tired, probably. But in case it's not, just for me, he saved it. Hit lock on his phone, slid it under the pillow. Then he laid down, rain against the window, wind brushing the glass, silence. Then that sound again, just barely like it was stitched to the wind itself, a whisper. And this time he didn't move. He just let his eyes stay open, watching the ceiling, listening, breathing slow, as something behind the wall whispered back. Last night, Eli Weston checked into Crescent Inn, room 413. It was clean, fresh, quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't peace, it's watching. And then came the whisper. The first night passed without incident. At least, nothing visible. Eli Weston had always been a light sleeper, a habit from childhood when storms meant getting up to unplug everything and checked the doors twice. But in room 413, his sleep was different, thinner, like it skimmed the surface of consciousness but never went under. He awoke suddenly, heart tapping fast against his ribs, not from a nightmare, not from a sound even, but from the absence of one. The rain had stopped, and the silence pressed in too tightly around his body. He rolled over and glanced at the glowing red numbers on the clock, 2:13 a.m. Then he heard it again, that sound. Not quite speech, not quite air. Just beneath the threshold of understanding, a murmur that clung to the dry wall, like someone whispering through cotton. He sat up in bed listening. Still no words, still no clarity, but it moved, traveling from one corner of the room to the next, as if circling him. Eli rubbed his face. He wasn't scared, not really, but the kind of unease crawling up his back wasn't unfamiliar. It was the same feeling he'd had once in a courtroom hallway waiting on a verdict. The knowledge that something was about to happen, and it was entirely out of his control. He stood, took slow steps toward the wall, pressed his ear against it again. Silence. Then, just as he turned away, a whisper, right at the edge of his hearing. Not a voice, not in the traditional sense, but a presence, like someone was trying to speak through a mouth that didn't know how anymore. Eli backed away. His breath had gone shallow. He turned on the bedside lamp. The light cut through the quiet like a razor. Suddenly, the room felt smaller, the shadows deeper. Still, nothing there. He walked to the desk, picked up his phone, opened the voice memo app again. Second night. It's not just my imagination. At 13 a.m., I heard it again, whispering. No words, just breath, I think. But it's real. I'll try to catch it tomorrow. He hit save, then did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Just a quiet, shapeless request to something out there. Not for protection, just for understanding. The lamp stayed on the rest of the night. By morning, the hotel looked different. Not physically, but the air had changed. Outside the room, the hallway stretched endlessly quiet. Carpeted floor muffled his steps. Each door he passed seemed sealed shut, like nothing behind them had moved in weeks. Downstairs, the lobby was nearly empty, except for a housekeeper, a small woman in her 50s, with tired eyes and graying hair pulled tight into a bun. She was pushing a cart of supplies and humming low under her breath. The sound was oddly calming. Eli cleared his throat. She looked up, startled. Sorry, he said, offering a weak smile. Didn't mean to scare you. The woman blinked twice, then nodded slowly. You're staying upstairs? Room 413. Her hand stopped moving. She didn't speak, just stared at him for a long, silent beat. Eli tilted his head. Is that a problem? The woman pressed her lips into a thin line, then returned to folding towels on the cart. That room. She began, voice low, like it cost her to speak the words, shouldn't be rented. Eli frowned. Why? She didn't answer. Just picked up her cart and pushed it toward the elevator without another word. Later that day, Eli walked into town. He needed air, needed space. The sky had cleared, but the streets were damp, reflecting dull light of worn pavement. The town itself was small, a single main street kind of place with shuttered shops, a diner, and a broken payphone that looked like it belonged in a museum. He stepped into a corner coffee shop called Maggie's. The smell of burnt espresso and sugar hung in the air. He ordered a black coffee, took a seat by the window, and searched. Crescent Inn plus room 413 plus haunted. No results. He tried broader missing person Crescent Inn, then Crescent Inn, Crescent Inn. Strange noise, then hotel whispering walls, Crescent Inn, still mostly junk, except one link, an old discussion thread from over 2 years ago, buried in a dusty forum about local folklore. The thread title was, "Did anyone else stay in room 413? His heart skipped. He clicked. The post was short. User glass hollow T3. Stayed there in 2021. Heard whispering at night. 2 a.m. every time. Room 413. Manager said it was the pipes. It wasn't. I saw something in the mirror. I left before sunrise. No refund. Just silence. A few replies. Mostly jokes. One person said they'd stayed in 409 and never heard anything. Another replied, someone disappeared from that room. A woman never found. That one wasn't answered. But it was enough. Eli sat back, holding his coffee eyes fixed on the reply. A woman disappeared. His mind jumped back to the whispering. The voice that wasn't a voice. The vent in the bathroom. He finished his coffee, walked back to the inn, and made a decision. That night before sleep, Eli set his phone to record, placed it on the nightstand mic facing the wall. He left the lamp on, laid in bed, eyes open, watching the corner where the noise had first begun. The clock read 1:47 a.m. He waited, eyes heavy, breath slow. The room held its breath with him. Then 2:13 a.m. and there it was. The sound, soft like dragging air across sandpaper. Then, under it, something else. A low clicking, wet, muffled, a voice. No, but trying to be one. Eli sat up, not daring to speak. The sound danced across the room, behind the walls, beneath the floor. At one point, he thought it came from inside the mirror. He didn't sleep. He just lay there until the sound faded sometime near dawn. Morning, Eli opened his phone, played the recording back. At first, nothing but static. Then, a faint hiss. He leaned in, turned up the volume, then paused. There, under the white noise, a small click, a dragging sound. And then, unmistakably, a breath. Not his. Too close to the mic. Too intimate. Like someone leaning over it, whispering. He scrubbed back, played it again. Still there. Still breathing. He stared at the screen. Heart silent. Room still. Then saved the file. Labeled it Tuita Whisper Proof. Eli Weston recorded it. Not a dream. Not just nerves. A sound real cold and close. At 2:13 a.m. every night. Beneath the static it breathed. Now Eli wants to know who else heard it and why room 413 was ever reopened. The next morning, Eli didn't even pretend to sleep in. He left the recording running on his phone while he showered just in case. And though nothing played back later except water and silence, he couldn't shake the feeling that room 413 had been watching, not haunting, not some cold apparition, but watching, as if it wanted to be heard, but only when the lights were low and your breath was quiet. Eli made a mental note. Tonight, use two phones, different positions, better coverage. But first, he had questions. He found Marta, the housekeeper on the second floor near room 4009. She was wiping down the hallway windows, humming her usual soft tune. He waited until she saw him, didn't want to startle her again. She paused, her cloth frozen on the glass. Miss, he began gently. Yesterday, you said something about my room, that it shouldn't be rented. Why? She looked down, folded the cloth in her hands, then looked back up, eyes guarded. You don't need to stay there, but I already am. A beat passed. You should leave. Her voice held no anger, only certainty. Eli stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm not trying to bother you. I heard something. I think something happened there. Something no one's talking about. A flash of emotion crossed her face, barely there, but undeniable. Pain, or fear, or maybe just memory. She sighed. My niece worked here years ago on weekends while in school, back when the old manager still ran things. Before the big renovation, she glanced around as if checking for someone listening and then continued in a near whisper. They called it the quiet room. Guests always left early. Complaints about noises, whispers. One man said he saw a face in the vent. A woman said she woke up with bruises and didn't know why. Eli's skin prickled. Did anyone ever disappear? Marta nodded, slowly. Her name was Danica Wells. Stayed for a week. Room 413. Never checked out. They found her suitcase, her clothes, even her car. But not her. She shook her head. Just gone. Eli's voice dropped even lower. And the police, they came. Searched the room. Said there was no sign of struggle. No evidence. Just an open window and a missing guest. He blinked. But it's the second floor. There's nothing out there. Just a drop and an alleyway. Martha's eyes didn't move. She was the last before they shut the room down. Locked it for nearly a year. Then new owners came. Painted it over. Put in new furniture. Said the past didn't matter. She stepped back, grabbing her cart. But the room remembers. Eli didn't stop her as she pushed away. Back in the lobby, he approached the front desk. A different clerk was working today. Younger, maybe early 20s, with thick glasses and headphones in. Eli waited until the guy noticed him. Hey, Eli began. I'm in 413. I was wondering, do you keep guest records like archives? The clerk raised a brow, pulled out one earbud. We got a system, yeah. You forget something. No, just curious. Research. The clerk gave him a look, one part amused, one part annoyed. Eli added quickly, I'm a writer. True crime. Room 413 came up in a thread I saw online. Something about a missing woman a while back. Now, the kid's interest peaked just enough. You mean the girl who vanished, Danica or something? Eli nodded. Yeah, that's the one. The clerk leaned in slightly. I wasn't working here then. But I've heard stuff. My cousin used to say weird things happened on that floor. Phones ringing with no one on the line. TVs turning on at night. Did he say anything about the room being closed? Yeah, They sealed it up for a while, said it was under maintenance. Then last year, they brought in new furniture and reopened it. Only problem, guests still don't like it. Short stays, bad reviews. One woman called it the loneliest room in the world. That phrase hit Eli harder than expected. The loneliest room. Not scary, not cursed, lonely. He thanked the kid and walked out. His next stop was the library. He didn't expect much. Small town, sparse archives. But the local history section was surprisingly well maintained. He scanned microfilm, old police logs, newspapers from the past 15 years. Finally, a headline caught his eye dated April 2021. Local woman missing Danica Wells last seen at Crescent Inn. The article was thin. Danica Wells, 29, a school teacher from a nearby county, had been passing through town. Scheduled to stay 2 nights at Crescent Inn while visiting family. Never checked out. Hotel staff claimed she was quiet, kept to herself. The article quoted the original manager. She was very polite, paid in advance, seemed a little sad but nice. We just assumed she'd gone out early. Then we found her things still in the room. The police ruled it unexplained disappearance. No signs of forced entry. No known enemies. No financial trouble. Nothing to investigate. Just gone. Back at the inn, Eli sat on the edge of the bed, holding the printed article in his hand. Danica's photo stared back at him, soft eyes half smile. She looked tired. Or maybe just worn out, he whispered under his breath. You heard it too, didn't you? The clock said 6:11 p.m. in a few hours. 2:13 would come again, and this time he'd be ready. Eli placed his phone on the nightstand again, then took his backup, an older iPhone with a cracked screen, and wedged it behind the curtain, aimed at the corner of the room where the whispering seemed strongest. He started both recorders early, then turned off the light, laid in bed, waited. 1:38 a.m. His fingers were cold, eyes dry. 1:59 a.m. He tried to steady his breath. 2:13 a.m. The clock flicked softly, and there it was. The whisper, this time closer, not just behind the wall, but in the air, right over his shoulder. It moved slowly to the closet, to the vent, to the corner by the mirror. He didn't dare open his eyes, but he felt it, a weight in the room, not evil, not violent, just wrong, old, like something trapped in a sentence it couldn't finish. The whisper grew faint again, dissolving into the soft hum of the air conditioner. He didn't move, not for 10 minutes. Then he sat up, turned on the light. Both phones had stopped recording. Battery full, storage clear, no error, just off, like something didn't want to be caught. Danica Wells vanished. No trace, no body, no struggle. Eli found her name buried in an old forum, a newspaper clipping. A whisper passed between cleaning rags. And now, every night at 2:13, the room speaks. But it doesn't want to be recorded. It wants to be heard. Eli Weston was not the kind of man to scare easily. He'd sat through depositions with angry plaintiffs screaming inches from his face. He'd slept in rented cars with a knife tucked in the glove box. He'd lost things that made fear seem irrelevant. But that night, the fourth one in room 413, he felt something different. Not fear, not yet, but reverence. Like standing in a cathedral whose God had long been forgotten, yet still whispered from the rafters. He spent the morning reviewing the devices. Both phones had shut off at exactly 2:13 a.m. He double-checked the logs. iPhone 1 battery at 88%. iPhone 2 battery at 64%. Both should have lasted the night. No crash, no alerts. It was like someone, no, something had pressed stop manually. He stared at the screens for a long while, then checked the files. Corrupted, white noise. Nothing usable, except one tiny fragment, only a few seconds long, from the backup phone. He leaned in, and there it was. A click, then a slow, drawn-out inhale, not his. Too deep, too close to the mic. Then, just before the clip ended, a single sound, L, not a full word, just a breath of one. It could have been anything. But it felt like the beginning of his name. Eli didn't eat much that day. His stomach curled at the thought of food. He wandered town again, hoping the wind might scrape off the tension. But even in daylight, the inn's shadow followed him. He bought a small handheld recorder from a second-hand shop. Old analog, batteries only, no Wi-Fi, no app to crash. He returned just before sundown. Room 413 greeted him like a memory, one that didn't belong to him. The air was cold again, not from the weather, from presence. He placed the new recorder on the pillow, tucked his phones in opposite corners of the room, triple-checked the batteries. Then before nightfall, he did something strange. He talked to the room, just softly, whispered, "If you're trying to say something, I'm listening." He didn't expect a response, but something in the silence shifted. 11:12 p.m. Eli sat at the desk, staring at the wall, watching the seconds roll. 12:30 a.m. He turned off all lights, but one, the dim yellow bulb in the bathroom. 1:45 a.m. He laid on the bed. This time he stayed awake with his eyes closed, still, breathing slow, the kind of stillness prey makes. 2:13 a.m. The second ticked past. No delay. The sound arrived, not from one place, from all sides, like the room itself was inhaling. First, it brushed the wall behind the bed, a soft, swirling murmur. Then to the vent, a scratching, faint but deliberate, like fingers dragging metal. Eli didn't move. Then it changed. The whisper shifted into rhythm, not words, but a cadence. Da-da-da, da-da, like someone knocking on a locked door in another dimension. Then, a sound he hadn't heard before, dripping, wet, slow, from inside the wall. He opened his eyes, only slightly enough to see the room blurred through lashes. The lamp flickered, and in that flicker, for half a second, there was a shadow by the closet. Not a person, not standing. It was low, like someone crawling, then gone. The vent clicked, loud this time, real. He sat up, reached for the recorder, hit stop, breathed hard. His chest felt tight, his body cold, like something had passed through him. Morning. He played the analog recorder back. The tape hissed and crackled. Old school texture. For nearly 10 minutes, just room tone. Then drag, whisper, click. Then faintly, a voice. higher pitch, female, help, then static again, then silence, then it lives here. Eli froze. He rewound, played it twice. The second voice was not human. It was close, and it was in the room. Eli sat by the window for the rest of the morning. Curtains pulled back, sunlight pooling at his feet like proof of the world outside. But the room never stopped feeling dark. He took notes, printed the recording to digital, wrote a timeline. Then, near noon, he decided he needed to see behind the wall. It started with the vent. He unscrewed the metal cover. It came off too easily, as if someone had opened it before. Inside was dark, dry, and full of dust. But tucked just inside the lip, not visible unless you reached in, was a scrap of paper. He pulled it out slowly. Faded ink, rough handwriting, torn from a journal. The message read, 2:13. Again. Always the same time. I think it knows when I'm awake. I saw its hand through the mirror. I don't think I'm alone anymore. Signed, D.W. Danica Wells. His hands trembled as he folded the page. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall, then glanced at the mirror. That night, he angled one phone directly at the mirror. Another faced the closet. Recorder on the pillow again. This time, he added a whisper before bed. Danica, if you're here, I want to know. Then he closed his eyes and waited. The whisper came again. Not at 2:13, but 2:09. Early. It started with footsteps, then a scraping, then a knock on the mirror, 3 slow taps, then a whisper very close to the bed, right by his ear. You don't belong. Eli opened his eyes. Nothing in the room, but the mirror was fogged, and on the glass, written in condensation, were 2 words, stay out. At 2:13 a.m., the whisper returns. But it's not just sound anymore. It moves. It watches. It leaves warnings in fog. Behind the vent, Eli finds Danica's handwriting her final entries. She saw something in the mirror. Something that didn't want to be seen. You're listening to Midnight Crime Stories, where every whisper carries a shadow, and every night holds a darker secret. The condensation on the mirror had long since faded, but the 2 words, stay out, burned in Eli's mind like they'd been carved into the glass with a fingernail. He didn't sleep again after that. He just watched the room slowly brighten with dawn, like light could bleach out whatever had whispered near his ear. But nothing that lived inside room 413 ever really left when the sun came up. It just waited. At 8:00 a.m., he stood in front of the mirror. It was bolted into the wall above the bathroom sink. Standard size, no visible damage, no cracks. But something felt off. Not the mirror's reflection, the shape of it. It wasn't flush with the wall. Not completely. Just a hair's width of space around the edges. Eli ran his fingers along the frame, then pressed. Nothing. Then again, harder. A dull, hollow knock, not solid wall. There was something behind it. He retrieved a screwdriver from his car. He'd brought one on the road, out of habit. A leftover paranoia from too many years of fixing things alone. Back in the room, he stood on a stool and carefully removed the 4 screws at each corner of the mirror. One was stripped. He had to wiggle it free, which took minutes of slow, nervous twisting. When the last screw dropped onto the sink, he pulled. The mirror didn't come off immediately, but it moved. The top leaned forward just an inch, and behind it, Darkness. Not drywall, not brick. An open space, a void. Like the mirror was a door. Eli set the mirror aside gently onto the tiled floor and stared. A rectangular hole about 24 inches wide, framed with old wood and dust. Inside, cobwebs, dry air, the scent of decay, and something else. He reached in with a flashlight, shined it into the cavity. First thing he saw, a camera. Old, early 2000s style camcorder. Dusty, the lens cracked. It was sitting on top of a shoebox. He pulled the box out slowly. It wasn't empty. Inside, a few photographs curled at the edges. A small cassette recorder. No batteries. A broken hairbrush strands still caught in the teeth. A folded piece of clothing. A light blue scarf slightly stained. And at the bottom, a piece of yellow notebook paper brittle from age. He set everything on the counter and stared at the photos first. There were 5. Each one showed the same woman, Danica, but they weren't selfies. They were taken from a distance. Inside room 413, sleeping, brushing her teeth, sitting at the edge of the bed, looking at her phone. Someone had been watching her. From inside the wall, his stomach clenched. He picked up the cassette recorder, slid in fresh batteries from his own device, pressed play. For the first few seconds, silence. Then, my name is Danica Wells. This is day 4. Something is behind the mirror. I think it watches when I sleep. I heard it again last night. It said my name, but not like a voice, more like breath. I think it's trying to come through. The tape clicked, then continued. I tried to tell the front desk. They said I was imagining things, but I found a hole. I blocked it up with towels. I don't think it liked that. A pause. Breathing. Then a final line. If you find this, I'm sorry. I don't think I'll be here in the morning. Click. The tape stopped. Eli didn't move for a full minute. His hands trembled around the recorder. This wasn't just whispers. This was stalking, surveillance. Whoever, whatever had been inside that wall had watched Danica, documented her, hid the evidence, and never left. He checked the old camcorder. No tape inside. Battery long dead. Probably damaged beyond use. But the photos were real. The scarf still faintly smelled of vanilla and sweat. And the paper. He unfolded it gently. One sentence written in faded black pen. It's not a ghost. It's a guest that never checked out. No name. Just the same handwriting from the vent. Eli called no one. There was no one to call. He just sat in silence, the box open beside him, staring at the mirror frame, the space behind it, the darkness where someone had once crawled in and stayed hidden. His voice was barely a whisper. Why her? No answer. Not yet. That night, he left the mirror open, just to see. He turned off all lights, sat in the chair by the window, a camera pointed toward the mirror, the recorder on the nightstand. He waited. 2:13 a.m. The whisper came, louder this time, and angrier. Not violent, not physical, but agitated. The room groaned. The bed creaked once. A click echoed from the bathroom, and then the mirror creaked. Just a breath of movement, a subtle tilt, like something shifting behind it. He didn't breathe. He kept the camera rolling, watched as a fingerprint appeared on the fogged bathroom glass, a single oval mark, then another, then a handprint from inside the mirror. It stayed for 5 seconds, then faded. Eli stood up slowly. walked toward the bathroom. No one there. But the air was heavy, charged, and the mirror no longer showed just his reflection. In the bottom left corner, for just a moment, he saw Danika's face, pale, still, watching. And behind her, a second figure, not fully formed, dark, shadowed, crawling up the wall like a spider made of smoke. Then it was gone. He staggered back. The room still, but his chest, it felt marked, like something had seen him back. A hidden box behind the mirror. Photographs of Danica taken without her knowing. A cassette confession. A handprint left in fog. And a second face crawling from the walls like smoke. This wasn't sleep paralysis, not a haunted room. Something or someone had lived inside room 413. And Danica wasn't the first to be watched. Eli sat in the hotel room's single chair for hours after the mirror went still. He hadn't slept. The camera still ran a red light blinking softly from the dresser. The recorder, too, still hissed, capturing the room's breathless silence. But nothing more came through. No voice, no touch. Only a deep, endless quiet that felt like the pause before something much worse. By 6:00 a.m., Eli had made his decision. He needed answers that Crescent Inn and its mirrors could no longer give him. He needed to know what the police knew, not the press, not the rumors, the official reports. He showered, dressed in the clothes that didn't smell like fear, and left the inn for the Riverside County Sheriff's Office just off Main Street. The building was small, red brick, tired windows. Inside, the air was filled with printer toner and burnt coffee. A young officer sat behind the reception glass, scrolling something on a tablet, chewing a pen cap. Eli smiled faintly. "Morning." The officer looked up, nodded. Eli cleared his throat. "I'm trying to get access to a missing persons report from 2021. Danica Wells. She was last seen at Crescent Inn." The officer blinked. "Family? No. Research. I'm a writer. I have some public documents already, just looking for more details. Anything that's open access." The officer typed, waited, then shrugged. "Hold on. You'll need to talk to Deputy Marks." Deputy Lauren Marks looked like someone who had stayed too long in a job that never paid her enough. Late 40s. Sharp, clean uniform. Eyes that didn't smile anymore. She led Eli into a side room, mostly boxes and mismatched chairs, and sat across from him at a plastic table. "You're writing about Danica?" He nodded. Marks leaned back. "You're not the first." That surprised him. She continued. 3 bloggers, 2 podcasters, and some amateur filmmaker with a drone. They all came here, all asked the same thing. What happened to her? And what did you tell them? Marks tilted her head. That the case is closed. Not solved. Just closed. Eli felt a chill. Why? Marks hesitated, then sighed. Because there was no evidence of a crime. No signs of struggle. No body. Just a quiet woman who checked into a hotel room and didn't check out. We did a full sweep of the premises. No fingerprints out of place. No blood. Her car was still parked in the lot. Her suitcase unopened. Her phone wiped. Eli blinked, wiped. Marks nodded. Factory reset. Left on the bedside table. No fingerprints. No passcode. And the manager, Marks shifted uncomfortably. That's where it gets tricky. According to the report, the manager at the time was Frank Bledsoe, 62, local resident for over 20 years. No criminal record, cooperated fully, but there was a note in the file that caught Eli's attention, a printed email. Bledsoe had written to the hotel's ownership 2 days after Danica vanished, requesting that room 413 be closed indefinitely. Guests have complained of strange sounds and feelings of being watched. With this latest incident, I no longer feel safe offering that room to the public. I respectfully request that room 413 be taken offline until further notice. The request was denied. Eli leaned forward. What happened to Frank Bledsoe? Marks frowned, retired, left town 6 months after Danica disappeared. No forwarding address. She paused. But here's what I remember. Off the record. Eli nodded. Marks lowered her voice. I spoke with him the day after she vanished. Said he had checked her room personally. Found the window unlocked, but it wasn't broken into. It was opened from the inside. Eli felt his stomach twist. She jumped. Marks shook her head. It's a 12-foot drop onto gravel. There was no blood, no broken glass, no footprints in the dirt. Nothing. And the mirror, Eli asked softly. Now? Marks looked uneasy. Why are you asking about the mirror? Because I found something behind it. He reached into his satchel, pulled out a single photograph, one of Danica asleep, taken from inside the wall. He slid it across the table. Marks stared. Her lips parted. She didn't speak, just stared. Do you know who took this? Eli asked. No, she whispered. But I think I know why the case was really closed. Eli froze. What do you mean? Marks stood, walked to a filing cabinet, and unlocked a thin drawer. She returned with the document, handed it to him. At the top, internal memo, subject room 413. Do not pursue. It was dated April 19, 2021. 10 days after Danica went missing. Signed by the then chief of police. The memo included the following line. There is insufficient evidence to support continued investigation into Wells's disappearance. All efforts have been exhausted. Further attention to this case may invite undue liability for local businesses and law enforcement. Eli read it twice. Then again, it was buried, he whispered. Marks nodded. I didn't agree with it. But I didn't have the power to stop it. She lowered her voice. There were other disappearances in that area. One in 2016. Another in 2009. Same pattern, different rooms, but always the same hallway. No prints, no forced entry. Same kind of silence. Eli stared at her. Why didn't anyone talk? Marks looked away, because silence keeps small towns safe. Eli left the station with a copy of the memo and the sick knowledge that someone or something had been allowed to stay behind the mirror for years, uninterrupted, unseen. That night back in room 413, Eli didn't set up his equipment. He didn't hit record. He didn't point cameras. He sat on the bed with the cassette recorder in his hands, turned it on, and whispered, Danica, I found the report. I know what they did. I know what they ignored. But I'm not leaving. The air in the room changed. Not colder, just denser, like breath caught between walls. Then The vent clicked. Once. Then silence. Then a voice. Low, tired. Not angry, not anymore. Just present. Good. The police buried it. A locked away memo. A manager who fled. A woman who vanished. Danika's case was never solved, just silenced. But behind the mirror, behind every whisper, at 2:13 a.m., something watches. And now, something speaks. By sunrise, Eli Weston had stopped pretending to be afraid. Fear had rules. Fear came with sharp edges, clean escapes, and explanations. But this wasn't fear. This was a communion. He wasn't just in room 413 anymore. He was part of it. Marta was pushing her cart near room 408 when he found her again. The hallway was quiet. Light filtered through the grimy window at the far end. She didn't look surprised to see him, but she did look tired. So tired, her eyes seemed not to focus anymore. Marta, she paused, still clutching the handle of her cart. I need to know what happened to your brother. A silence passed between them, like the carpet swallowed the words. Then she slowly let go of the cart and folded her hands in front of her. You found the mirror. Eli nodded. Her gaze shifted not in fear, but in the way someone looks at an old wound they already know will never heal. I knew you would. You're the type. You don't run when it whispers. I heard you mention your brother once. He worked here too, didn't he? Luis. She said the name softly, like it still hurt her tongue to say it. He was on night shift. Security. Back when Frank Bledsoe still managed this place. Eli stood quietly waiting. Marta looked down the hallway. The other guests were still asleep. The inn was quiet. She began to speak. Luis took the job to help pay for our mother's treatment. He didn't love it. Said the walls here were too thin. Too many lonely men with sad eyes and old secrets. But he kept at it. One night I remember, because it was April, he came home different, not shaken, just quiet. He told me there was a noise in one of the rooms. Thought someone had broken in. He said it came from behind the wall in 413. He went in lights off. Didn't want to spook anyone, and he saw it. Eli's breath slowed. What did he see? Marta's eyes didn't blink. He said something was crawling. Not a person, not an animal. It moved like it didn't understand bones. He said it slid from the vent across the ceiling, then stopped and hung, like it was watching him. He didn't scream. He didn't move. It didn't either. Then it crawled back inside the wall, and the room went cold. Eli felt the base of his spine grow tight. Marta continued. He told the manager. Bledsoe didn't believe him. A week later, Luis quit. Wouldn't explain why. 2 months after that, I found him in his apartment, sitting on the floor, dead. They said it was a heart attack, but his eyes were open, and he was holding a mirror in his lap. Eli whispered, was it 2:13 a.m.? Marta nodded once. I checked the coroner's report myself. She stepped closer now, voice barely audible over the hum of hallway silence. Do you believe me? Eli met her eyes. I do. Marta exhaled, like she'd been holding that breath for years. Then she reached into her apron and pulled out something wrapped in tissue. a small rusted key. She placed it in his hand. What's this? It's for the old crawl space. There's a panel behind the boiler room. Room 413 used to connect to it back when this place was a boarding house. The tunnel runs along the second floor wall. You want to know where it comes from? Eli nodded. She whispered, "Follow the whisper." That night, Eli didn't sleep. He didn't even pretend. At 1:30 a.m., he crept past the front desk key in his pocket and made his way to the boiler room, a door marked maintenance near the service elevator. The hallway smelled like old water and burnt wiring, inside dust rust, and the hum of aging machinery. He found the panel behind a stacked pile of plastic crates. It was small, no bigger than a kitchen cabinet, but the rusted latch fit the key perfectly. He turned it. It clicked, then creaked. The door swung open, revealing a black tunnel barely big enough to crawl through. Inside, wooden beams, cracked pipes, a sloped dirt floor. Eli slid inside. It took him nearly 10 minutes to reach the wall behind room 413. He felt it more than saw it. The sound changed. The air grew colder. He stopped, turned off his flashlight, waited. 2:13 a.m. The whisper exploded through the wall, louder than ever. Not just a voice, dozens of them, all layered, all trying to speak at once. Then silence, and a light, faint, flickering, from ahead. Eli crawled forward. The tunnel widened into a tiny compartment, barely 6 feet wide, like a forgotten closet behind the walls. And inside, he found it, a mattress, old, molded, stained, surrounded by photos, all pinned to the wall. Danica, a woman from the 1990s, a man in a suit from 1982, photos from different eras, all taken from inside the rooms. He was staring at a nest. Someone had lived here, watched them, listened. Eli turned toward the corner and stopped breathing. In the dirt was a pile of clothing, a purse, and on top of it, a cell phone, still intact. Danica's. He picked it up, no charge. But inside the cracked screen was her wallpaper, a photo of her smiling, and behind her, just over her shoulder, a shadow, long arms, no face, crawling from the mirror. Eli backed out, heart pounding. As he exited the tunnel and locked the panel behind him, he didn't say a word. The whisper followed him, but this time, it laughed. Behind the walls, a nest, a mattress, dozens of photos, Danica's phone, a smile frozen in time, and behind her, a shadow with no face. The whisper isn't haunting this place. It's inhabiting it. And Eli has just crawled through its front door. Eli Weston didn't go back to his room immediately. Not after crawling out of that tunnel. Not after seeing Danica's phone in the dirt photos pinned like prey around a forgotten nest. Not after hearing the whisper laugh. Instead, he stood in the hallway beneath a single flickering light, breathing slowly, shallowly. The cold air around him felt different now, more personal, not just presence, but attention. Room 413 was awake. It was nearly 3:30 a.m. when he finally turned the key and pushed open the door. He didn't turn on the light. Not right away. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the mirror, listening. The whisper didn't come. It was done talking for now. Eli whispered into the dark, "I saw where you live. Nothing. And I found her. Still, nothing. Then he said her name, Danika. The air shifted. The mirror's surface shivered slightly like a ripple had passed beneath the glass. Eli leaned in, and from deep in the walls, barely audible, the whisper returned. But this time not menacing, almost mournful. Daylight returned slowly, painting the edges of the room with pale yellow. Eli opened the curtains wide, letting in everything the room seemed to hate. Then he got to work. He began dismantling every drawer, every panel, every vent. He tapped on walls, pressed along baseboards, even checked under the carpet at the corners. And then, beneath the bed frame, behind a cracked slat of wood, he found it, a plastic sleeve, folded tight, dusty, yellowed with age. Inside 3 torn pages, the last entries of a journal, Danika's handwriting, the same loops, the same urgency. He sat cross-legged on the floor and read. Page 1. It comes at the same time. 2:13. I don't sleep anymore. I pretend. But it knows. It needs me to be awake. I tried praying, tried yelling. Nothing helps. Tonight I saw something in the mirror. Not a face. Something darker. It was smiling. Page 2. I blocked the vent again. But it moves things. When I sleep, it opens what I close. I dream of hallways now, endless ones, lined with doors. Behind each one, someone watching. I woke with dirt under my nails, but I hadn't left the bed. Page 3. I'm not alone anymore. It's in the room now. Not behind the mirror. In the room. It speaks without speaking. Says it's been forgotten. Says it was locked away and left behind when they rebuilt this place. It's lonely, and it wants company. Eli closed the final page and sat in silence. Lonely. That word again. Not evil. Not rage. Lonely. A voice without a body. A shadow without a name. Not haunting room 430. Claiming it. He stepped into the bathroom, stared into the mirror again. His own face stared back, tired, pale eyes rimmed in red. But behind him, just for a breath, he thought he saw something move near the closet. He spun. Nothing. But the closet door was slightly open. He could have sworn he left it shut. He walked toward it. Slowly. Opened it all the way. Nothing inside. No clothes, no bags. But pressed into the corner of the closet wall was something he hadn't seen before. A symbol drawn in charcoal. An open eye. With a mouth in the center. It looked ancient. It looked like it had been redrawn over and over, like someone inside the walls had maintained it. Eli took a photo. Then, out of impulse, he whispered, "What do you want?" The light flickered, not sharply, just enough to answer. And the whisper came back soft as lace across stone. "Stay." He backed away, but didn't leave. He sat on the bed again. Now, everything was clear. Danika hadn't been attacked. She hadn't been taken. She had been invited. Room 413 didn't kill. It didn't need to. It just waited. It whispered. It watched. And eventually, it made you choose. That night, Eli packed his bag, but didn't leave. He just sat, staring at the mirror, waiting. He placed the journal pages in a sealed envelope and tucked them into the vent, not to hide, but to offer them back. As he turned out the lights, he whispered, "I'm still here." And the room answered, not with noise, but with a breath, the deepest breath yet, like it was relieved, like it had been waiting all this time. for someone to listen long enough. Danika's final words revealed it all. The whisper was never trying to hurt her. It was lonely, watching, forgotten. It wanted someone to stay. And now, Eli isn't afraid anymore. He's listening, sitting quietly in room 413, letting the walls breathe, letting the darkness speak. The decision wasn't sudden. It crept in slowly, the way shadows lengthen on a winter afternoon. Eli, Weston didn't pack with urgency. He folded his clothes neatly, took one last look at the room's soft grey walls, set his notebooks on the nightstand along with Danika's torn journal pages. He left the door unlocked, but he didn't leave. Instead, he waited. June 17th, 2:05 a.m. The Crescent Inn slept. The hallways were quiet. Not a single car passed on the street below. Not even the ice machine groaned. Inside room 413, Eli sat cross-legged on the bed, the only light a faint red glow from his recording device. But he wasn't recording anymore. The camera was off, the batteries removed. There would be no evidence tonight, only presence. 2:13 a.m. The clock blinked softly, and then it began. Not a whisper, not this time. A sound like a door creaking underwater, like breath that had waited decades to be exhaled. From the mirror, the air shimmered. From the vent, a slow rhythmic scratching. From the closet, the faintest knock. Eli didn't move, didn't even blink. He whispered, "I understand now," and the room answered. The mirror began to fog, but not from heat, from something else, like memory crawling its way back to the surface. A handprint appeared, then another, then a face. Danika. Not sad, not afraid, just present, watching. And behind her, the second shadow returned. But it wasn't crawling anymore. It was standing. Eli closed his eyes, let the sound pour in, let it wrap around his chest like a cold blanket. He whispered one more word, "Stay," and the lights flickered, then died. Morning, the sun rose as it always did, soft and slow over the quiet town. Housekeeping knocked at room 413 around 9:45 am. No answer. They waited until checkout time, then used the master key. Inside silence. No bags, no man. The bed was perfectly made. A notebook rested on the desk, open to a page, with one final entry in Eli's handwriting. He was never trying to scare us. He just didn't want to be forgotten. Beside the notebook sat Eli's phone wiped clean. No photos, no recordings. Only one file remained saved under voice notes. 2:30. They played it, and what they heard wasn't a voice, it was breathing. Two people breathing softly in sync. Then a final whisper, "We are not alone." Security footage was reviewed. Eli was last seen entering his room at 9:16 p.m. the night before. No one saw him leave. The hallway camera showed no movement after midnight. None, not even a flicker. The footage was intact, untouched. But the mirror in room 413, it now had a crack, just one, from the bottom corner, reaching up toward the center, like something had pushed from the inside. The room was closed again, quietly. No statement, no sign, just marked under renovation on the Crescent Inn's website. The staff were told not to talk about it. They didn't need to be told twice. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, Guests in the rooms nearby report hearing something strange, a whisper, or maybe just breathing from behind the walls or behind the mirror, always around 2:13 a.m. And if you listen closely, you might hear two voices now, not just one. And if you're alone in that hallway, sometimes the light above room 413 flickers just once, almost like it's saying hello. Eli Weston vanished without a trace. No forced entry, no evidence, just a note and the whisper. Guests still report breathing behind the mirror. Two voices now, not one. And though room 413 is officially closed, there's still one thing left to uncover the footage from the final night. 3 days after Eli Weston disappeared, a detective from the Riverside County Sheriff's Office retrieved the SD card from his camera. It was the only remaining device not wiped clean. His phone's empty, his laptop blank, the analog recorder missing. Only the camera placed on the dresser facing the mirror still held something. But when Detective Munro plugged the card into his department terminal, the files wouldn't play. Corrupted. 4 hours of footage reduced to a flashing cursor on a black screen. But Munro had seen this before. He contacted a friend, a tech specialist who worked in forensics out of a nearby university. A favor, quiet, off the record. It took 2 days. When the file finally opened, only a single hour of video had been recovered, 1:12 a.m. to 2:14 a.m. And what it showed was something no one could explain. The video began with Eli sitting on the bed, lights off. Only the dim red glow of the digital clock showing 1:12 a.m. barely illuminating his face. He wasn't talking. He wasn't moving. Just watching the mirror. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Not even a breath. 1:33 a.m. The camera flickered. Just once. Then something in the reflection of the mirror shifted. Not in the room. In the reflection. As if the glass had recorded something the room hadn't. A second figure appeared beside Eli's reflection, but not in the room itself. In the mirror, it was standing behind him. A shape, tall, shadowed, like stretched fabric in the shape of a person. Eli didn't flinch. He didn't seem to see it. But in the mirror, the figure leaned forward. Its face, if it had one, brushed Eli's reflection, then disappeared. 1:46 a.m. Eli stood, walked to the mirror. He stared into it for nearly 6 minutes. His mouth moved, but no sound recorded. The footage had no audio, but the transcript included a brief lip-read translation supplied by a forensic analyst. Eli seemed to say, "I hear you now. I'm not afraid. Are you still alone?" And then finally, "I can stay." 2:11 a.m. A single breath fogged the mirror. There was no one else in the frame, but the fog curled upward like someone or something had exhaled from inside the glass. Then a handprint from the inside. The fingers were long, too long, pressed once, then slowly dragged down the mirror as if inviting him closer. Eli reached out, touched the glass. The moment he did, the mirror in the footage shimmered like water. A pulse of static ran through the video. 2:13 a.m. The exact second, the camera feed fractured. Horizontal bands of distortion tore across the screen. The colors inverted. Then, a frame-by-frame flicker of something moving across the room. In one frame, Eli was sitting. Next standing. Next gone. In his place. A shadow darker than black occupying the space. Then nothing. The camera went still. The mirror was empty. The clock read 2:14 a.m., then static. End of file. Detective Monroe reviewed the footage 10 times. He brought in a specialist from the state crime lab. They said the anomalies were not consistent with software error, not camera malfunction, not tampering, but temporal corruption, like the video had captured something outside of time. Monroe wrote a single sentence in his internal report. Subject Weston did not exit room 413 by any physical means. The footage was archived, then sealed. No public release, no news story, just a quiet notation. Case suspended due to lack of evidence. But the rumors began to spread anyway. A few staff members at Crescent Inn shared what they'd heard. A few guests overheard fragments in hushed conversation. And soon, online forums began lighting up again. People wanted to stay in room 413. They called it the mirror room, the room that watches, the room that whispers back. Some even brought cameras of their own. They didn't stay long. Each one left with the same complaint. I could hear someone breathing behind the mirror. 6 months later, the Crescent Inn underwent silent renovations. No official announcement. But one change was made without explanation. Room 413 no longer exists. The plaque was removed. The wall rebuilt. Now, there's a storage closet between rooms 412 and 440. No door, just drywall, just silence. Still, at night. If you walk down that hallway quietly around 2:13 a.m., some guests swear they hear a soft knock from the wall where room 413 used to be. 3 gentle taps, and if you listen long enough, a whisper follows. Sometimes it says your name, sometimes it just breathes, and sometimes, if you're really unlucky, you might hear 2 voices breathing in unison. The renovations were done quietly. No press, no permits filed. Just drywall where a door used to be. Room 413 was gone, officially. But buildings like the Crescent Inn, they keep memories like lungs hold smoke. And late at night when the guests sleep and the lights buzz low, something still stirs in the space where 413 once stood. 3 months later, a woman named Claire Peterson arrived in town just before dusk. She was in her early 30s, bookish, quiet. The kind of traveler who asked for no recommendations and no maps, just a clean room and silence. She was grieving, the kind of grief that hums beneath your skin like radio static. Her mother had passed 2 weeks before, and everything familiar suddenly felt sharp and too bright. So she drove and drove until she found a small, tired inn in a smaller, quieter town. The sign out front was flickering. Crescent Inn. Vacancy. Claire parked. The man at the front desk didn't look up right away, just slid the form across the counter without asking much. When she signed her name, he glanced at it, then at her, then back down. Room 414, he said, handing her a key card. Top of the stairs, end of the hall. Claire nodded. No questions. He added almost too casually, "Let me know if the room feels drafty." She looked up, but he was already turned away. Room 414 was spotless. Neutral gray walls, clean sheets, a soft yellow lamp in the corner. But the closet smelled faintly of paint, fresh, new. Claire didn't think much of it. She was tired. She didn't care about the scent of new drywall. She only wanted sleep. She unpacked, took a lukewarm shower, crawled into bed just after midnight, 1:57 a.m. She woke suddenly, not from a nightmare, from something else, a sound, not loud, but close, breathing. She sat up in bed, listened. It was coming from the closet wall. She walked toward it slowly, bare feet on cold carpet, pressed her ear against the drywall. Breath, soft, rhythmic, like someone was standing on the other side of the wall, breathing with her. She didn't move for several seconds, then whispered, not knowing why. Hello. The breath stopped. Silence. Then a whisper, so faint she thought it might be imagined. You came back. Claire stumbled back from the wall, her breath catching. She stared at it, the flat, unmarked drywall, and whispered again. Who's there? Nothing. Just the low hum of the hallway lights. But then, from behind her, the mirror fogged. She turned and watched as letters appeared in the condensation, one at a time. Slow, careful, deliberate. ELI. Then DANKA. Then they faded. She stood, frozen, heart racing, breath shallow. She didn't scream. She didn't run. Somewhere deep inside, she remembered. Claire had dreamed of hallways as a child. Endless corridors lined with locked doors. She never told anyone. But they always ended the same way. A mirror at the very end. And behind it, breathing. And now in room 414, she felt it again. Not fear, something closer. Recognition. She turned off the lamp, sat on the bed, stared into the mirror, and whispered, "What do you want?" This time, the answer came. From the wall, from the vent, from inside the room. Not what. Who? Claire closed her eyes, and for a moment she wasn't alone. A warmth filled the air, a presence, not heavy, not cruel, just longing. She opened her eyes again and saw her own reflection, smiling. Except she wasn't. Her face in the mirror lingered a second too long after she turned away. By morning, the drywall in the closet had cracked, just a hairline, like something beneath it had shifted. Claire said nothing at checkout. She didn't mention the voice, or the fogged mirror, or the handprint that appeared on the inside of her suitcase. She simply nodded, returned her key, and walked out. That night, the front desk clerk updated the system. He stared at his screen. Rooms 401 through 420, but between 412 and 414, the cursor blinked. And for just a second, room 413 reappeared, then vanished. Claire didn't tell anyone. Not about the breathing. Not about the mirror. Not about the way her own name had whispered back to her in a voice that didn't sound like her own. Some truths are too heavy to share. She drove 6 towns over the next day, stayed in a roadside inn with too much bleach and too little warmth. But that night, at 2:13 a.m., she still woke, alone. The air still, the room unfamiliar. But on the bathroom mirror in her breath, the fog left 2 smudges, small handprints, not hers, like fingerprints on memory. She stared for a long time, then whispered, "I'm not going back." But even as she said it, she knew she was lying. 3 nights later, she returned to Crescent Inn. She didn't book online, didn't call ahead, just walked in with a duffel bag and a quiet voice. The man at the desk blinked at her. "You again," he said softly. Claire didn't flinch. Same room. He hesitated, then nodded. Room 414. She turned the key. The air was colder this time, or maybe she just remembered it better now. She placed her bag gently on the bed, opened the curtains, looked to the closet wall. The hairline crack had grown, still small but deeper, like the building itself was straining against the silence. That night, she didn't unpack. She didn't turn on the TV or scroll her phone or write in her journal. She just waited. 2:13 a.m. The lights didn't flicker. The room didn't shift, but the mirror fogged. Not fast, just slow enough to be deliberate. A warmth filled the air like breath pressed to glass. Claire stood, walked to the sink, watched as a phrase wrote itself in faint condensation. He's still here. And then, beneath it, 3 letters. ELI. Her hand touched the mirror, and the glass was cold. Too cold, she whispered. Show me. And it did. The mirror darkened. From the edges, inward color drained. Light faded. And behind her reflection, another room appeared. Not hers. Not 414. It was 413. Unsealed. Lit by flickering yellow. Peeling wallpaper. Dust in the corners. In the center of the reflection stood a man. Still, pale. Eli. Eyes hollow. Mouth slightly open. He was staring at her, but not blinking. Then, he raised his hand, placed it to the inside of the mirror. She mirrored the gesture, their palms aligned, separated by a veil of glass. And something older, her breath caught. And then, he whispered, don't leave. Her knees weakened. It wasn't just the voice, it was the ache in it. The gravity of being forgotten for too long. He was still there, inside room 413, or something that looked like him was, and it didn't want to be alone anymore. She ran that night, didn't sleep, didn't cry. She simply drove until sunrise. But the next evening, just after 10:00 p.m., she turned her car around. That's what grief does sometimes. It doesn't let go. It becomes a map back to the very place you said you'd never return. Back at Crescent Inn, she asked no questions. The front desk didn't look surprised. Room 414 was waiting, but the crack in the closet wall, now wide enough to slide a finger through, and the air so still. It felt like someone had just exhaled and was waiting for her to answer. Claire placed her phone on the dresser camera, pointed at the mirror. But she didn't press record because she understood now. This wasn't about proof. This was about presence. She turned off the lights, laid in bed, and waited. 2:13 a.m. The closet door creaked. Even though she had left it open, it moved inward, not out, like something pulling from the other side. And then the mirror pulsed with a soft, dim glow, not like light, like memory. Claire stood slowly, walked toward it, and saw Eli again. Clearer now, smiling, but behind him, Danica. She was standing in the corner of the mirrored room, face calm, eyes dark, silent. Claire stepped closer. They didn't reach out this time. They just watched her. And the whisper returned, not from the mirror, not from the wall, but from inside her own chest. It said, "You've always belonged here." Claire closed her eyes. The breath she took felt shared, like the room was inhaling with her. She didn't know if she was sleeping or dreaming, but in that moment, she wasn't alone. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't want to be. She didn't tell anyone she stayed. She didn't check out, didn't call her sister, didn't answer the 2 voicemails waiting on her phone. Claire simply remained in room 404, across the drywall from the space that wasn't supposed to exist. And every night at 2:13 the whisper returned. But now she listened, not just for noise, but for meaning. It started when she reversed the voice memo on her phone. The one she had unknowingly recorded that first night when she thought she was dreaming. It was only 5 seconds long. She hadn't planned to keep it, but something told her not to delete it. Now playing it backward. The static dissolved, the hum stretched, and beneath it, something spoke. A voice, breathless and layered with grief, whispered. She was never alone. Claire sat still for almost an hour after that, just watching the waveforms on her screen, as if staring long enough would reveal more. The next night, she played the second recording backward, this time a different voice, deeper, slower, male. The room remembers. She went back through all her voice memos, each one, even the accidental ones, each clip that seemed like noise, now revealed words when reversed. They weren't cries, they were instructions, commands, or maybe invitations. On the fifth night, she played the longest clip, 2 minutes of white noise recorded after she woke with her heart racing, not knowing why. Reversed, it was a chorus, layered voices, some familiar, some not. But together, they formed a sentence. It needs a guest. She wrote everything down, filled an entire journal, each phrase, each pattern. She drew the symbols she saw scratched into the closet wall. She even traced the mirror with salt, just to see if it reacted. It didn't. But that night, her reflection lingered again 2 seconds behind her movements. And when she smiled at it, it smiled wider. She stopped leaving the room, stopped eating full meals. She drank water, kept the lights dim, sat close to the mirror each night waiting, not with fear, with understanding. Room 413 hadn't come for her. She had come for it. The whispers got clearer, not louder clearer, like they'd been muffled by time, waiting for someone willing to play their grief in reverse. One voice, she thought it was Eli, repeated the same phrase 3 nights in a row. Go backward, to go in. She didn't know what it meant until she dreamed of a hallway. In the dream, Claire walked down a corridor lined with mirrors instead of doors. Each one showed a different room, a different guest, all awake at 2:13 a.m., some standing, some screaming, some whispering back. In one mirror, she saw herself still seated in her own room listening. In another, Danica, wearing the same scarf that was found in the box behind the mirror. She was writing something. Claire leaned in. Danica turned and whispered through the glass, "Play the mirror." Claire woke with tears on her cheeks. The next day, she wrote everything backward. She filled 5 pages in reverse words, flipped sentences, reversed letters, mirrored. She didn't know why. Until that night, 2:13 a.m., the mirror fogged again. But this time, she wrote back. Using her finger, she traced WLCOMEME backward in the fog. The glass cleared instantly. No message returned. But from the closet, she heard something move. A slow dragging sound, not angry, almost curious, like a hand reaching toward a light switch in the dark. The next night, she reversed the camera on her phone, faced it toward the mirror, filmed herself sleeping, and when she woke at dawn and played it back, there was a moment at exactly 2:13 a.m. where her sleeping reflection opened its eyes. Only the reflection, not her, and it stared at the camera, lips moving, saying something, frame by frame. She watched it. She lip-read the motion, backward of course, and what it said chilled her more than anything else. Let me back in. She was no longer sure who she was anymore. Which reflection belonged to which version of herself, or which whispers were memories, and which were hers. On the seventh night, she sat at the closet wall. The drywall was soft now, dry, thin, as if waiting. She pressed her palm to it, felt warmth, not air, warmth. She closed her eyes and listened, not for ghosts, not for monsters, but for the voice that had always been inside her, the one she'd silenced since her mother died, the one that whispered, "You're not lost. You were called." Claire opened her eyes, and for the first time, she didn't feel like a guest anymore. She felt like part of the story. Claire listened to the whispers in reverse and found a message in every breath. It needs a guest. Let me back in. The mirror didn't show her reflection anymore. It showed what waited behind it. Now the room remembers. And it's ready to show her why. The human brain doesn't remember places. It remembers how places made you feel. And room 413, though no longer marked by a number, remembered everything. Every breath, every sleepless night, every time someone whispered, "I'm listening." And it remembered who it had once been. Claire didn't ask to see the past, but she felt it anyway. It came slowly at first, a scent of old antiseptic under the paint, the chill of tile beneath new carpet, a sound too low to hear vibrating beneath the floorboards like the hum of a machine long since turned off. The room was remembering, and now, so was she. It began with the files. Claire had gone to the county archives out of instinct, some last tether to the outside world, something concrete to remind herself she was still part of it. But what she found buried beneath decades of misfiled permits and misprinted maps was a blueprint. Crescent Inn had once been something else entirely. In the 50s, it was part of the Riverside State Hospital, a psychiatric facility with a wing devoted to what the documents called long-term containment, a place for patients who were not violent but unnerving. One wing was labeled Wing B, Observation Suites, and at the very end of that corridor, one room was circled in red, room 13. Not 413, just 13. Claire's hands trembled as she traced the hallway on the blueprint. Room 13 had been sealed after a fire in 1962. The fire itself was minor, contained, no fatalities, but the report included a note scrawled in pencil at the bottom. Subject W is no longer contained. Mirror compromised. Close the wall. She brought the file back to room 4, spread it across the bed, and that night, the whisper was waiting. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a plea. It was a memory. 2:13 a.m. The mirror didn't fog. It reflected another time. She saw the room before it was papered and painted. Steel bed, stripped walls, a single overhead light, and a girl, pale, maybe 17, sitting cross-legged on the bed, rocking gently, mouth moving, but no sound. In the corner, a mirror, and behind it, nothing, until it blinked. The girl in the vision subject W looked up, stared directly at Claire, across time, across glass, and whispered, "Do you remember now?" Claire gasped. The reflection rippled. The light above her bed flickered, and she collapsed onto the sheets, heart racing the pressure in her skull, like someone pressing memories into her. She dreamed of old halls, of nurses looking away, of voices in vents, of her mother standing in front of a mirror brushing her hair, then stopping, staring, saying nothing, just breathing. In the morning, Claire called the Historical Society. A woman with a fading voice confirmed, yes, the Crescent Inn used to be part of the asylum. The original room 13 was where they kept that mute girl, the one who spoke backward in her sleep. People said she wasn't insane, just listening to something no one else could hear. Claire asked if the girl had a name. The woman paused, never given one. Just a note in her file, the one who remembers. Back in room 414, Claire found something strange beneath the carpet, a loose floorboard near the closet. Inside a scrap of paper, old, crinkled, one phrase, scrawled in a looping hand. She was never locked in. She was keeping something out. Claire's breath caught. She whispered, the mirror wasn't to trap her, and the room whispered back, it was to protect you. Now it was clear. The mirror was not a window. It was a seal, a fragile one. And every time someone whispered, every time someone listened, the seal weakened, not by force, but by invitation. Danica, Eli, Claire, they weren't victims. They were keys. Each one brought a piece of memory back to the room. And now the room didn't just remember. It wanted to be remembered. Claire stared into the mirror that night with new understanding. Not fear, reverence. Like standing at the edge of a sacred tomb, knowing what waited inside was neither dead nor alive, but hungry to be known again. She traced a finger across the glass, spoke a single word, when, and behind the mirror, a second voice whispered one she hadn't heard until now, a child's voice, quiet, lonely. Soon, the Crescent Inn was once an asylum. Room 13 became 413. The mirror wasn't a decoration, it was a seal. Claire wasn't a guest. She was the final key. The room no longer whispers to her. It remembers with her. And now, it's ready to open. Claire didn't check out. There was no receipt, no record, no trace she'd stayed in room 414 again. But every guest after her felt it. The quiet that wasn't quiet. The air that tasted like breath someone else had just exhaled. The mirror that didn't reflect quite right anymore. She left the journal under the bed. Page after page written in reverse. Not coded, not encrypted, just written for the room, not for people. On the last page, she had written one sentence upside down, backwards, and smudged slightly by what might have been a tear. I see it now. The room was never haunted. It was forgotten. After Claire vanished, the hotel staff closed room 414 for maintenance. Guests complained of strange dreams. Footsteps from the closet, a clicking sound inside the mirror. Housekeeping refused to go near it. One maid found all the towels stacked into the shape of a person seated cross-legged on the bed. Another swore the soap bar in the shower had the word "stay" etched into it, even though it had never been used. A new manager was brought in. He didn't believe the stories. He reopened the room quietly, changed the number from 414 to 416, skipping 413 as always. But the system wouldn't update. Every night at 2:13 a.m., the digital room log flickered. For exactly 1 second. Room 413 reappeared, then vanished. They sent in a repairman to check the electrical panel behind the closet. He never made it back out. Not that night. Not ever. All they found was his clipboard, a cracked mirror shard on the floor, and handprints on the inside of the closet door. That's when the owner decided, no more games. He sealed the entire hallway, a full wall of plaster and paint covering rooms 411 to 416. Guests were moved, keys retired. That part of the hotel was labeled closed for restoration. But restoration never came, because restoration implies return, and the room had already returned enough. Still, if you visit the Crescent Inn today, and you walk past the vending machine, and you press your ear to the stretch of wall where room 413 used to be, you'll hear nothing at first. But wait, breathe, let your heart slow. Let your mind forget your name. And just as your fear starts to slip away, you'll hear it. A faint tapping, like someone knocking from the other side. Then breathing, not fast, not threatening, just waiting. And if you listen long enough, if you stay quiet enough, you'll hear a voice that is two voices, a breath that is layered with memory, and a whisper, ancient and childlike and patient, saying, there's always room for one more. And now, there's no vacancy, not behind the mirror, not inside the wall. The guests are still arriving. They just never leave. Not because they can't, but because they finally understand. They're not guests. They're part of the room. And the room, it's still listening. Outro whispered, thank you for listening to Midnight Crime Stories. Subscribe for more whispered true crime tales to accompany your sleepless nights. And remember, some doors don't close. They just wait for the next knock.